Righty then, let's see if my Discord bot can be bothered to post this live stream starting, because I didn't post it when I initially made it. So I think Me6 is just kind of broken potentially. Oh no, it does actually give a little ping when the stream starts. Fantastic, that means that I can close Discord. So, today I'm streaming on Friday this week because, as I said a few weeks ago, I'm still kind of like figuring out what day works best. Tried Sunday, figured out that, hey, maybe it's not a great day to do it, despite it being a day off for people, so that people can like tune in and watch. Maybe, hopefully, people can just have this on in the background while they're at work instead. But it's just nicer to do it on a Friday, so that I actually have some room to have a weekend. It's kind of a nice thing to have. So today, what we're gonna do is I've got these items here, which are all equipable items for my character in the game. All have some effects. The effects are already programmed in, right? They're mostly just attribute boosters like fire damage up or HP up. Some of them have some more scripted out behavior, which is hard coded onto the character itself through, I believe, a gameplay tag, if I'm not mistaken. Like this area of effect on damage. When you get damaged, it does an area of effect, well, sort of like attack counter thing. That's just hard coded in the player's damage encode. It just checks, hey, does it have the gameplay tag associated with this augment? If so, it runs that code. That probably could do, to be fair, with being taken away from run by the player and having the actual augment just have a function that it runs, and then have the player just run whatever augments it contains at that time. It'll make it a little bit more flexible. I don't know that I need necessarily that much more flexibility in that way, because I don't think there's going to be that many more in the game, but hell, there might be, I don't know. Not really something that I'm going to take a look at right now today. Today, the plan is taking all of these and giving them actual item icons, because I don't have those yet. I also don't have really like definitive plans for all of them. A lot of them are fairly self-explanatory, like fire damage up, which is going to be a flame icon, right? Ice damage up, it might literally just be these images embedded, well, more or less, embedded into the little charm container that I have modeled here for, well, the thumbnail, but it's actually the container that we're going to be using as well. But then, how do you visualize movement speed up? Well, with a foot, I guess. That fair enough. But how do I visualize the difference between hit ignore chance, which is just a chance, or when you get hit, well, for you not to get damaged, and iframes up? They're fairly close together in terms of what they do. They both negate damage in their own way, but how do you visualize that in terms of a different icon? I have no idea. This is probably going to be like a shield. I have no idea what iframes up would look like for an icon, so that'll be interesting. And how do you have the difference between attack speed up or strength up? And right here, both of those are things. I don't know how you distinguish those two. How do you distinguish the difference between keeping more souls or experience or whatever on death compared to getting bonus souls on each kill? Again, very similar things that they touch on, but they should be visually different. And I guess we're going to figure that out as we go. So here in Blender, I have a basic casing, and there's just going to be like a little icon in here, and we're going to make renders. One of them always straight on. That's going to be the UI element for the actual player UI. And then one of them a little bit more diagonal, which is going to be the general like item icon for it. Hopefully that'll start explaining itself as we maybe get to that later today. But before we do that, I think it's a good idea to just go through here and just note down some ideas. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually take my Blender here. I have a to-do list, charm IDs, subcategory. That's all necessary for the add-on to work. And then we can mark this as tasks. So I'm going to put that over on my other monitor real quick, and I'm going to just make tasks here for all of the augments or charms, whatever you want to call it. Well, it's actually, I don't think that works that well now that I think about it. Because I probably need just a bit more room to explain myself than a to-do list could give me. How do I note these down? I guess I just get to work on them. I guess that's how I note them down. There's going to be a couple of easy ones that we maybe just want to get started with. First and foremost, though, need this thing to be a little bit better in the way that it looks. So let's get started here with adding a quick bevel. Not that much. A quick bevel to the whole thing. Just to make it look a little bit better. The bevel and cavity kind of make it weird together, but if we take out the cavity, that looks, yeah, that looks the way I want it to look. I'm going to keep the cavity on because it makes it easier to see internal lines and that kind of stuff. And make a material for this thing. I'm using cycles rendering. I don't know if that's a great idea, but the reason that I'm using cycles here is because I kind of want to use the Toon BSDF, which apparently does not exist in Eevee. But I also don't think my GPU is supported here in cycles, maybe. Maybe it is, actually. Seems like it might be. Oh, no, actually, I don't think it is. It's grayed out, yeah. So that's an issue I've run into before. If I go into my preferences here and into, where is it? System. It does actually use the GPU, it seems. I need to probably switch it to Vulkan for that then. I would assume. For now, I'm going to just not bother with that. We're going to render it on the CPU. Maybe, probably. We'll see. We're not going to be rendering anything anytime soon, though, because we're going to be working with this. But that's why I'm on cycles. I want to use the Toon BSDF. I think that'll be a good thing to do. This should be a little like stone, cracked stone-like. And I'm going to just do the material entirely here in Blender, I think. As opposed to opening up Substance to just make like one texture map for it. It's a little... It might be a little bit nicer to make a slightly nicer looking material for it that way. But I think we'll manage just fine here. Because I've got this idea of just starting with a Voronoi. And maybe putting that into a color ramp. We'll actually give this colors here in a moment. And then this is going to be the distance from edge. So you get like this crack like structure. And then I also want this to first go into a float curve. So we can make a little bit more like this. Now it is being squashed down a fair bit. So let's give this a texture coordinate. Just based on the object, and that pretty much solved that immediately, so that's good. Probably scale is a little bit better. Do we have a distortion? don't have a distortion here. But I think we can add distortion if we wanted to by just adding in a noise texture. Take an in-list vector. And I'm outputting this. Obviously that needs to be... I mean, it's a cool effect. It's not what I wanted it to be. I think what I want is probably a vector math adding node. How would you do it this way instead? Yeah, so now we get a little bit of distortion in here, and we can use, well, actually the... Does that make sense? I don't think that makes sense to do, right? It might actually make sense to do it this way. So if we scale this up, it becomes more and more distorted. If this is 0, we just have 0 distortion, right? So just a little bit of distortion. And then we can scale this just to make the line slightly more wobbly. And then scale this even more to make just less lines in total. All I want is just a handful of lines going through this. It might even still be a little more distorted than I would like it to be. I guess instead of the scale here, what we could do is we could just divide this. Well, let's divide by 0, so that's going to be a bit of a clusterfuck. Can we just make a... It's been a while since I've done any of this shader stuff in Blender. Can we just make a, like, float? Just like a number... Input, I don't remember what it's called. There is a thing where you can just have a node that is a number. I don't remember what it is though. Value. Called value, and if we just put a value in there, it makes a vector of that. Oh, that's a bit much. Ooh, that's a lot much. Oh, as it approaches 1, it is just the normal look of it, and then if we divide it more and more and more, it approaches the, well, actual normal look. Okay. So what we probably should do is we should have this be multiply to make this a strength, and then we can put this at a low value. So the value of 0, it's not distorted at all, and then we start slightly distorting it. And that's only good enough. Well, that gets us to this. Instead of black to white, what we want this to be is probably still fairly black, to be honest. Maybe a little lighter than black, but not that much. And then this should be, well, not white, but instead a more like rock type gray color. Usually it's good to mix in a little bit of blue into something like that. Just a tiny bit, not too much. The hue here is fine, just a little saturation even. Value maybe up a little higher. And then this is still a little soft to be cracked. So this is, there's a lot of blur going in and out. which we don't want. So probably at this point add in a greater than. Or maybe less than. It's not really what I was looking for. And we just set a threshold. And voila. That honestly kind of works. Now we can also drive some displacement here, I think, by just taking this value, and I don't think we can just put it directly into the displacement. We'd need to go into render view to actually see that probably. Light point, let's just add in the light. Yeah, so it's not getting displaced yet, and that is because somewhere in here I think it might be in material settings. I always forget. Displacement. There we go. Now displacement actually works, but it's not working in the way that I would want it to. Because what we need to do is we need to take the normal from the input geometry, multiply, probably should be vector math actually, multiply that with probably the inverted of this, and then make it displace inward instead of displacing the rest outward, but we'll take a look at that in a moment. That is a bit much. So we also just divide that. Or actually, again, I think maybe multiply is the better thing to do. And this should, if I set this to like 0.05, maybe, it just displaces everything equally still. Okay. How much memory is required to run both Blender and Unreal at the same time? Fantastic question. Let me check. At the moment, let's see, I'm using about 40 gigabytes of memory. But the thing about memory is that your computer is going to use more if you have more. So you probably could get away with 32. It would just be a little less responsive. Let's see. And to be fair, about 7 gigabytes of that is my Google Chrome with like 20 tabs open. And 4 gigabytes of that is OBS, which I'm using to stream. 3 gigabytes of it is Affinity as well. So those added up together is like 13 gigabytes of this entire thing. So if you discount those, you definitely are under 30 gigs. Obviously, you're going to have other background processors. So 32 is probably doable. Might slow down a little bit because of that. Well, also heavily depends on what you're doing in Blender. Like, this is a super easy Blender scene, so this is not taking up a lot of memory at all at the moment. The Unreal level that I have open right now also doesn't have that much going on in it. There's a fair few assets open, I guess, but it's not that much going on here. If I open my actual like game's persistent level, there's a lot more memory usage in that, and that would probably like skyrocket that by another, I don't know, 10 gigabytes or something like that, maybe. Well, that might mostly be video memory, I don't know. Anyway, yeah, this is not doing what I thought it was gonna do, which is annoying. Don't we just have like a height map input or something like that? Like displacement. There we go. That's what I was looking for, I think. If we just put this, it's just a one-dimensional value at this point, so we can just multiply. We don't even need to multiply it, actually. It just has a scale value baked in right here. Right, with that, I think we got our thing going here, right? No, maybe not. So why is this? Not displacing. Well, it is displacing, it's just also displacing where it's black. I guess it requires in the geometry's normal, maybe? I'm a little confused. But if I try to visualize... Yeah, I mean, this is... Those are black, so those should not be displaced. Then again, I do like the idea of just inverting this, so can we multiply this just by... -1? That makes sense, because that's going to multiply with 0. Don't we just have an invert here? Invert color. That might work a little bit better. We put that into the height, and then we set the mid-level to 1. And this into the displacement. Taking a break from my plugin. Just been busy making billboard textures and quest icon textures. Don't get me started on what the fuck. You know, maybe I'm just not going to do a displacement. Maybe just doing this with normals is fine. I feel like maybe just doing this with normals is fine. Don't want to get stuck on this while I want to start working on the actual icons. So let's ignore displacement for now. We might come back to it later if I feel like it. But for now I kind of don't. So we can just put this in here as heights. Still not doing that much. Blender search function really fucking sucks, man. Do you need to put in the original normal for it as well first, maybe? Let's take out the color, see if it has any... It doesn't have any normal response at all. What does the normal output look like going into here? Yeah, just... It's barely there, man. There are some lines there, but... There we go, that's a bit more like it. I mean, it doesn't really do much when the base color itself is black, I suppose. Probably could have seen that coming. It was a little bit. Well, it's also inverted. Very strong normals. Oh, when we zoom out a little bit, it starts showing up a bit more. And now it's a bit too much. So when we zoom in, it just... I don't know, man. I might go back to Eevee and just make my own toon response, because this is kind of fucked. I don't love this. Let's add in maybe a sunlight. See how it responds to that. A little better, but still not quite what I would like it to be. So yeah, let's switch back to Eevee, which is going to make this entire thing... Well, actually, hold on. Is that a way to get a Toon BSDF into Eevee? Because I can't make... Yeah. That's... If you add it in cycles and then go back into Eevee, it still, like, persists? It's a bit weird. There is a bit of weirdness with, like, parallaxing to it. So I still want to test out if I just use a, like, diffuse BSDF. Instead, to see what that looks like. That's more or less the same. So it just functions as a diffuse BSDF, I guess. Maybe just also the strength is a little much, to be fair. You're not going to be seeing this up super close either, so this is honestly probably fine. We're going to just stick with this for now. I kind of like that. Anyway, then I want to have certain parts of this be a little bit glowy. And that's where we get into ideally it being randomized on an individual object basis, but if we just blend, does it combine? Mix. It's called mix. If anybody at Blender at any point in the future sees this, your searching could really do with some like fuzziness and synonym tagging stuff, where if you look for something that is roughly similar to the word that you're actually looking for, it still pops up. It's not a huge deal, but it would make it so much easier, for me in particular, anyway, to deal with this. So, long story short, we're going to use this map. Do I have Node Wrangler enabled? I don't think I do. I probably should. Node Wrangler. Because it's not exactly what I wanted to do. I wanted to add in a preview node, but that's also fine. And this now just doesn't work for some reason. It's fine. It's okay. It's fine. We're going to use this over here. I'm just using the wrong shortcut. Hold on. Again, here there's so many fucking things that having a fuzzy search would be really, really helpful. Isn't that supposed to be a shortcut where you can preview? I'll just Control-Shift-Click. That's fine. So we're going to be using this, and then just also math symbols, bringing up the actual math nodes. Fucking that one, I am a little less forgiving about the fact that it doesn't do that. Because I can type in multiply and it has a math node for multiply. Why does that not also show up when I put in a multiplication sign? That seems like it's actually a basic thing that you should just have in there. But we multiply this, like edge map, or crack map, or whatever we want to call it, with just a noise texture. And that noise texture is going to also need to ideally be scaled like this, so that it's not like squashed down or anything. Scale this a little something like this, and then we pull this through a curve first, I think. And then especially multiplying it is not a great idea, is it? Well, no, it might be. I might just be setting up the wrong looking curve. That's a little better. Alright, now all I need to do is make sure that this noise texture is somehow offset randomly, ideally on a per object basis. So let's see if we have any randomness. Object info random. I think that'll do it. So if I just vector math add, just add in all directions, that's fine. The idea being that if I now duplicate this a couple of times over, they're all in theory going to have their own unique looking pattern. And every time I duplicate it, it creates a new unique pattern. And it seems like it does in fact do that. So yeah, that idea works at least. There's also going to real quick check if I have audio. Yep, I do. A couple of streams ago I started without audio. And I don't know, I'm using a different OBS scene now, so might have been still an issue. Seemingly not though, so that's good. Okay, that much then goes into this mix shader factor. Might be inverted. Strength definitely can go up a little higher. And can we make this like a color input or something like that? Constant. Surely we just have a constant color. There we go. Then we can now give any color that we like. And I think that's going to be a way for me to potentially differentiate something like... I need to come up with a color scheme for that as well. But things like defensive versus offensive things, like blue or red or whatever. To just kind of communicate what type of thing we're working with here. Let's also put in a constant value for this one. Starting at like 10. Downside to it now being in Eevee, but again, we can switch to cycles. Emission looks better in cycles because it actually emits light. Well, if we compare this to this, it's not that big of a difference, to be fair. We're going to stick with what we got now in Eevee, I think. Alright, that's the base layer done. This is going to be reused for pretty much everything going forward. So let's give this material a name. Augment base. And now, unfortunately, it is time to move on and actually start containing or making the things that are contained inside of it. I'm going to start with the max HP up one because it's just a heart. It's going to be the easiest thing to make, I think. And it will let me kind of experiment with how I want this setup to look and how I want this to work. So, how do we most easily make a heart? I would say that we just add in a circle. Maybe move this down ever so slightly. Then we add in a circle. Give that a fair few more thirds, like 32. And then proportional edits. Sharp, 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 sharp. And then this one we pull down. You know, that's actually not too terrible to put that together this quick. If we then just solidify that, add some thickness to it, and shade auto smooth, pull it down. Hard HP up. Feels like there's a little bit of room for improvement, don't get me wrong. I definitely think that this is a little maybe too basic. I also think that the world color itself needs to be a little stronger. And then we also have, where is that thing again? Outputs, or is it on world itself? Somewhere in here we can set up an alpha. I guess we can just look for it. I forget that there's a search menu. It's called transparent. Yeah, there we go. So now we have a transparent background, which is what I want. But let me just increase the world brightness, which we just had in here somewhere. Surface, there we go. It's like a baseline brightness thing. Again, this thing needs to be visually more interesting. But that is relatively achievable by just doing something. Okay, there's a little bit of issues here with the geometry. So maybe we look at that first. Yeah, that's maybe a bit too tight together. So just select all these, and I think we just merge these. So if we do that, then we can insert this. And the way that I'm going to deal with this is, again, I'm not going to texture paint this because I can't be bothered to do that. And I kind of want this to be a little bit of a like 3D vector art style anyway. So I'm just going to make this a new material. And we're just going to color these in with different materials instead. This doesn't need to be optimized for like texture or shader stuff anyway, because we're going to be rendering these out. Won't actually exist in game. So if we just make a new material, this can then be the lighter one. Maybe even, oh, maybe don't extrude that quite yet. So we do have the solidify modifier. 3D, UE, hello. Now we can extrude this down at least a little bit. Oh, we do need 2 material slots for it. That makes sense. Assign this, and then we can make this a just slightly darker green color, and that should pretty quick should make this a little bit more visually interesting already. Subdivision is going to annihilate this, right? Yep. Yep, it does. So that's probably a bad idea. Because there's being a massive angon. That's fair. That's pretty fair. You know, I kind of think that maybe this should be emissive instead. The center of this. Making things emissive just is kind of a cheat code to making them look better very quickly. Just kind of wish that the way that Unreal just adds in the glow effect with emission, that Blender also will do that. You can, it's not that difficult to do, but it's kind of harder to influence on a per material basis. So I just render this image. I don't have a camera, okay, that makes sense. This wouldn't be the camera angle that we actually use, but for now, if I render this image, is that the wrong hotkey? Render image is F12, not F11. Okay, we've got this image, cool. We can take this into compositing, and oh, this has been overhauled in I don't know which version of Blender, but since the last time that I looked at this, I actually kind of think that I like it. But let's see. I'm guessing we make a new graph. It adds in our viewer and our output, and then is it still called glare? Yeah, we just add in bloom this way. I might actually use the emissive map now. No, because this is just an image. I just have retime. I don't want. No, I don't need that. It's kind of good to have that in there anyway, because I want these to have a little bit of bloom to them. Might as well set them to a high quality, yeah. Why not? Slightly lower threshold. That kind of works actually. This is just way too strong. I just need this to be way pulled the fuck down. So in here. That's the annoying part. You can't see it in real time as you pull it down from here. So I just have to kind of guess. Okay, let's pull this down to 5. Then we render the image. And it adds the effect onto it. And then we have to pull it down, let's say, to 2. Then we render the image. And well, now it's just a little hazy. It's not really. I guess the size needs to be not too big, but then the strength maybe. Hmm. Just output the highlights, or let's just output the glare for now. Yeah, okay. Kinda like that. And then this maybe does go back up to like 4. And then output the actual output. Oh no, that might work. It feels like it's still visually a little too simple. Something needs to happen visually to make this hard a bit more interesting. It could just be an arrow in the middle of it that has arrow up. It's also maybe a little bit weird to have it represented as a heart. Now I think about it. Because in game, my health is represented by those masks in the bottom right corner there, right? So maybe I should just use that instead. It kind of feels like using a heart is fine though. So let's add in a cube. Small cube. Flat cube. Well, maybe not that flat. Because this way it'll also easily signify the fact that it is increasing the stat, right? That's not... Those don't line up. Oh, that's gonna bother the hell out of me. Yeah, that's gonna bother the hell out of me. And I'm assuming that the arrow there is actually centered. So need to move this. What the hell's going on with the perspective on that anyway? Oh, that's diagonal, is it? We are orthogonal, so there shouldn't be any perspective here. So this is just messed up. Also, hold on. Overlapping verts, which is not helpful. Might still not be exactly symmetrical, but at least these points now line up, which is helpful. How do you... How do you clear annotations again? I forget how you clear the annotations. I guess we're gonna... Oh, just with control you can erase them. Okay. Then this needs to also have a color. And we're using diffuse BSDF for everything. What do we give this as a color? Just a even darker green? Do we give it like red? To contrast it. I think red is... It's also something that is often used for health. Ah, this is also... Okay, I need... This is going to bother me. I need this to be fixed. So, bear with me here for a moment. This is not symmetrical. And I don't have auto mirror. And that doesn't come by default anymore, does it? Alright, I'll just manually mirror it. That's fine with me. Everything up to here and nothing more. And then delete the rest. And from there we will mirror it. So yeah, there's definitely a little bit of fuckery happening here. But we can probably get that to work. If we then... Is that merging? And that is now, in theory, symmetrical, I think. Add in a face. And we're probably going to need to rework, yeah, some of the material stuff. But that's fine. That should be inverted. Feels like maybe it should be a little bit... I don't know. What's going wrong in terms of making the heart shape? I guess it's a little too narrow? What if we try to... pull this out a bit more and pull this... It's also not that high poly is just part of the issue, I think. Add in a couple bevels just to smooth out some of these harsher edges as well. Especially down here. Still feels like there's not enough rounding here. It should be rounder. But how do you... It's actually kind of interesting. Now, it shouldn't be that round. Like, looking at this is a pretty good heart shape. That is starting to approach improvement. And I think maybe we do need to just... Holy shit, no. Bit more like that. Oh yeah, that's doing something, I think. It's making the edges a little wonky. Me just fucking around with everything, but that is kind of par for the course when I'm doing anything art related, to be fair. Just space these out a little bit in some way. Maybe the wonkiness won't disappear, but it'll be a little bit less visible, is my hope. Then again, especially from an angle, you don't really see it. I kind of feel like this is approaching something that I would maybe enjoy. It's been an hour. It's been an hour and we made one thing. So it's not it's not great. But we can reuse the heart shape itself for the next one. Because I think I also want a heart shape that's more red, grey, black themed. Because I've got an augment that is about like dealing essentially glass cannon. And I think I want that to also use this heart shape. So let's name some of these objects first. Arrow, heart, augment base. And just changing the name. That's interesting. Does it derive the randomness from the object's name? It seems like it does, because when I change the name to something random, and then I just remove those extra random characters, it goes back to the same thing. So it's probably using... It's actually using the object's name as like a seed for the random function, I think. That's fun. That's really fun. Alright, so what we do is we set up one camera like this. For a face-on view. And the camera itself is also actually, all the renders are going to be 512 by 512. So let's see where we set that up again. In here. So that'll be 512 by 512. So we can get a little closer in to that. That'll be one camera. Get it in as close as physically possible. Without cropping it off, of course. That's probably approaching as close as we're going to get. So that would be the top-down camera. Top-down. And then I also want to add in another camera that is a little bit more like... how do you make a different camera snap? To your location? Matter of fact, how do you make it render from one camera versus the other? I don't remember that. Blender change primary camera. Oh, it's in your scene settings. That's in scene. So this is not a primary camera, is it? Yes, it is. Okay. And that's going to be maybe a little bit more like... Also fairly straight on, but just with a little bit of an angle to it. Is this a good angle, you think? Maybe it is. There's going to be a colored background behind this as well, I think. But we'll add that in Affinity. We're not going to do that here in Blender. Or maybe we could do it in Blender. Maybe the compositing in Blender is good enough to support that. Let's actually try to see if we can do that in Blender. So this is our output render. I'm wondering if we could just overlay it over a color, but then we need to... it's probably easier to just do that in Affinity, because we probably need to, can we just do a color? And then we need to add a, do we have a vignette over top of that color? And then we need to mix this, assuming that A is the foreground, this would be the background. Need to go into the viewer as well. Maybe these need to be turned around. Oh, hold on, this mix based on the alpha. Yeah, so I'm not seeing any vignette to this, buddy. Probably make our own vignette. But I think it'll just be easier to do that in Affinity instead. So we'll stick with this. I'm kind of wondering if this is the right angle or not. Do I want it to be flatter? I don't think I want it to be flatter. Maybe I want it to be a little bit tilted like this. That actually, oh, that kind of makes it, yeah, I kind of like that. Right, if we render that, that's a pretty like cool dynamic camera angle, I think, for it to be like a showcase of, hey, this is the item that you got. I just think that it needs to be a little bit more centered in the frame. Am I going crazy? Because this does not feel centered. This feels centered. Which actually makes sense because that is roughly the middle of... Not the arrow. I was looking at this being the center, but I don't think... Well, no, that is the center. So why... Why does it feel like this is more centered? I guess we can literally just measure the distance from here to there and from there to there. It's just something about the perspective, I suppose. But yeah, I kind of like that. Kind of do. Now that's making me think, though, just as a little aside, that maybe this should in fact be emissive as well. If we just make this emission and we increase this to 1.5. Maybe I'm going a little overboard with the emissiveness though. Maybe the whole heart itself doesn't need to be emissive. Maybe that was a little much on my part. So maybe we just inset this a little bit more. Like this. Once again, copy over this material. Let's go into the shading tab and set the emission for this back to 0. And then just make this... Well, no. Hold on. Feels like if you have faces selected while you make a new material, it should auto-apply that. What does that look like? That actually kind of works. Ooh, that works a little better than I thought. I thought it was going to be shit. But I kind of like that. Because now we have our emission more concentrated on the edges. So we can probably even pull it up a little bit more, yeah. And if we do that, this can then be maybe also a bit more emissive. Maybe not. .75. Again, if I could do this in real time, it would be just a little bit smoother. But I think that that ends up somewhere that I do like. Oh, now my entire viewport is fucked up like that. That is fantastic. What the hell, dude? Why is my entire viewport tilted now? Blender! Get a fucking grip! How do I fix that? View. Surely, it's in view. Nope. I guess we just do that, right? Just snap to an orthogonal viewpoint, and then we are free. All right. Now, as far as lighting goes on this, I don't think I particularly need much. We've got the sun, which for some just shadow casting is probably nice to have. I've got this one point light over here, which probably does like actually almost nothing. And the only thing that I really want the the light for is the shadows that they can cast to create that contrast. For that, maybe a point light isn't the best. Maybe for that what I want is more of a spotlight. Oh, that makes sense. It's a bit much. Maybe a little much. Pull down the world a little bit more. Yeah, that makes it lit from this direction, a little bit darker in this direction, just gives a little bit of depth that way, I think. So that's the more we boost up the overall world lighting, the less that contrast exists. So I think that'll be the breakdown for this. Is we'll have 2 sets of lighting as well. Can I set up like a sky dome light as an object? Because what I kind of want to do is make a collection here, new collection, which is profile lighting. I know it's not quite a profile shot, but I'm gonna call it that. So that I can turn off the lighting for that altogether, and we'll also have a lighting setup for the top-down one. So I guess we'll just make the lighting setup for top-down now. I guess really all that we need to do for that is just make a very soft area light. If we just add in the power to this, be a little bit of exposure. For the most part, I just want this to be fairly big. So there's no harsh shadows. We just look at this from the top, and that's all that needs to be, I think. So this would be top-down lights. Hello, why can't I put this into there? There we go. For now though, we don't need to render any of the top-downs. These are the cameras, which is okay. And then we'll start making collections. Oh, we duplicated that collection by accident. We'll start making collections for the actual augment. So HP up, and that'll contain the actual objects here, so that we can start rendering them out. Okay. I think we're only going to get 1 or 2 of these done today. I was hoping that we'd get more done, but creating this base setup is, I think, probably the most important thing. So yeah, if I render this right now, this is what we get. And I probably want to save that, I would imagine. Put that in a different folder. Profile renders. And we'll call this HP up profile. render. And we save that as an image. Cool. Then I get to go find that in my folder structure. So hold on a moment. That'll be in images, items. That's icons, that's not items. Items, there we go. 3D files, augments, profile renders. Okay, found it. Cool. We've got that. That then goes into Affinity, where it is a 1080 by 1080 file. So let me real quick just make a new file here. That is 512 by 512. Pull that in, and there we have it in Affinity. And here it is just a matter of making a background for it. And that should be fairly easy. So we can just add in one rectangle. Boom. Well, that exists under it, of course. That rectangle, let me just give it a gradient overlay from the get-go. I was gonna make one just solid background and then have a like feathered down circle. We might be able to just give this a radial gradient. But where do I put in the colors if I do that? Maybe you don't. But if I also add in a color overlay and I set this to, for instance, like this blue color. Okay, so that doesn't quite work that way. But I still could add in this now. And give this the gradient overlay. Hold on. Still might have something here. Radial. And we'll add this as a subtractive layer. I don't know, scale to 175 by 175. That makes it grayscale again. Oh no, fill opacity just needs to go down to 0. Okay. Honestly, maybe even like 215 by 215. Just a little bit of a gradient is all that this really needs. 250? Of 215 maybe? I mean, it does make a pretty notable difference still. I don't know what this angle is. I guess the angle doesn't matter for radial, only for the other ones. Do I want to add a outline to this? Probably not, right? Because it has the glare. I don't know, the outline kind of works actually. It's just like 2.5 pixels. Its resolution, it's a little jagged. But again, at this resolution, it's always going to be a little jagged. Just imagine that it's going to be on screen this big. It's a little on the edge on whether or not I actually like that. Let's give it 8 pixels. and just say that we do add it for now. And there's going to be the base that we work off. There's going to be one project. I'm not going to make a whole different project for every single image, because that's going to be annoying. So we just group this as the, would be like teal background. And we need to save this. Again, I'm gonna very nicely try to figure out where. I have a game dev folder here. Pair for Linux workspace dark reflection. There we go. I actually have a shortcut to this, kind of. Images, items, 3D files, augments. For now, I'm just gonna. I can just go in here actually. Augment affinity, because it's just the affinity file. It's nothing that actually needs to be exported. When we export, we do this, right? Now we export it, and then we also export it to that same location again. So you go find that again. It's the one downside to using Affinity through Wine, is that the folder browser is very annoying. Yeah, assets, images, items, 3D files, augments. Oh, and now we actually do need to have a folder specifically for augment inventory icons. And this will be the HP up augments. Cool. That'll be the first image done. Welcome back into Unreal, everybody. It's been a while since we have had this opened up, hasn't it? I need to figure out where I'm going to store these textures in my projects, because surely I have some location for that. In materials? Textures maybe? I think I have a different place for icons. This is more like text. Well, here we also have some. Just gonna dump it in here, it's fine. Did it actually import? It did not. Import done. Okay, cool. Back to items. Item assets. Equipables. I just spaced out entirely there for a moment, I'm sorry. Charm HP up. Inventory icon. HP up. Augments. And boom. There we go, motherfucker. Actually looks really good in engine like this. I'm quite happy with that so far. As the first one there, I'm surprisingly happy with the result. Yeah, not gonna lie. That's a lot less shit than I thought it was going to be, just seeing it in context now. I don't think I have a way of displaying those in player UI yet, right? If I go over here, this menu needs to be improved as well. Oh no, maybe I do. Yeah, I do. Somewhere in here. It's a little small. If we just make this full screen. Hold on. That's better. Again, you can't actually scroll past the skill tree because it uses the same keys for all the stuff. Yeah, it's a little small. Probably needs to take up much more of this interface. Because we also have a bunch of space over on the right hand side. But this interface itself is going to be changed out as well. Because instead of having just these names over here on the left hand side, it's going to have the top down icons here in different slots. I think just looks a little bit better and differentiates it a little bit from the item menu up above. And that way I can maybe even change this menu up such that this is one big menu where you just have a list of like the normal equipable consumable items here, and then just have the horizontal list of augments either above it or below it, so that it doesn't get split up into two separate boxes like it is now, because that's a little well, you can see it looks kind of shit. But then the information box can be extended as well. Those icons can be made bigger. We can make those icons bigger now, to be fair, just to enjoy a little bit of work that I've put in there. The UI, where is that? That's a fantastic question. Presumably it will be in the character menu. There we go. Yeah, so this can definitely, instead of being in this size box like this, the size box can be a little bit more like that. And then the item preview is a widget to itself. Okay, that's fine. That has the background image, this actual image, which is in a size box that is 64 by 64. So let's make this one like 256 by 256. Which is only half the size of the actual texture. But that's also the dimensions of it, assuming a 1080p screen space. So for 480 it would actually be 512. Did I say 480 for 4K? It would actually be 512. And if you're playing this at higher than 4K, well, that sounds like a you problem. Yeah, look at that. Just lovely. Like that. Don't like the fact that it's not centered or that it has this weird like spacing to the left and the right of it. Probably should have a frame that it's displayed in as well and all that type of stuff. But that's problem for the future. For now, that's pretty good. So let's make one more at least. And then we'll see if we make other ones after that. I'm also going to take a sip of water because I'm talking a lot. Man, YouTube's new way of counting views is really inflating view counts, isn't it? There's been 390 people checking in the stream so far. But the average view duration is like 27 seconds. I know a lot of people just bounce right away, which is fine. But even then, it's kind of rough compared to statistics as they've always been. Anyway, HP up. Let's just duplicate that entire thing. So duplicate collection. We'll disable the HP up one, and this will be, I'll call it glass cannon. Cannon with double N, I know, but it's fine. Don't need the arrow on this one, I don't think. And what we're going to do is we're just going to adjust some of the materials here. So the outside material, well, we don't even need to select anything. I think we can just kind of keep the same setup for materials, honestly. Just need to copy them over. And we'll call this glass cannon material 1. Hey, what's your take on Epic bringing Unreal and UEFN closer together with Unreal 6? Would this change your engine choice for future projects? Or is it too early to say? I mean, it is too early to say in some degrees. I do think it's a bad sign. I don't think it's a healthy sign for Unreal Engine personally. But if it is going to impact engine choice for future projects, it could, or it couldn't. I don't know. It depends on the project that would be happening after this, or somewhere in between development for this. So it's kind of hard to say, but it's definitely a bit of a hit in my confidence in Unreal Engine, because it feels like it is not elevating UEFN to be on par with Unreal Engine. It feels like they're kind of neutering Unreal to bring in the UEFN crowd, which is maybe not entirely fair, but also like the fact that they're getting rid of Blueprint. There's legitimate reasons for it. Because Blueprint is a bit like tied together with the actor framework, and the actor framework is restrictive and not flexible and just ancient at this point. So the fact that that's been overhauled at that point, like Blueprint is so tied together with that. Are they really going to make a whole new version of Blueprint for whatever the new framework is? Apparently not. But it feels like that choice is heavily based on integration with generative AI. And that worries me. Not necessarily because I think generative AI is bad as a blanket statement. I don't think it is. I think it can be, but I don't think it necessarily is. But to make such a decision is it shows a potential trend for the engine that I'm not a fan of. Because if it gets more integrated, like generative AI, LLM stuff, other AI related things, sure, people are going to make slop with that, but people make slop with things now. Asset flips have been a thing for forever. People make slop with anything. The issue is more so that I think anybody reasonable can agree that AI right now is in a state of development where there is just money and resources being pumped into it. It's a bubble. And if you disagree with it being a bubble, I don't think that we're like on the same level of reality to be having a discussion. Whether or not it is a legitimate bubble that's actually working toward something that is going to like unlock and is going to be like a utopia because of it, that we can discuss and we can agree or disagree on. I don't think we're heading to to that end of it. I think that we're heading toward a popping of that bubble. But right now it is overinflated and people are dumping billions and billions of dollars into it. In the event, which I think is likely, that this AI bubble at some point pops, what happens to any services that rely on this AI existing? The technology is still gonna exist, but a lot of this technology does not run very well locally. It needs to be provided through a cloud interface. So what happens to an engine that is integrated deeply with AI? It either needs to become very heavy to run locally, and Unreal already has an issue where Unreal Editor is just unreasonably heavy to run compared to other engine editors. Like Unity or Godot can run on a potato. Obviously the games that you can make in them, and then if you make big games, the editor's also going to slow down, but the editor just overhead by itself for Unreal already is unreasonable. you don't want to be adding on a whole bunch of AI models that run locally on top of that. But if they don't run locally, what happens when the providers for those things, when Anthropic goes bankrupt? Half your engine just ceases to work. Or at least those new features. And the deeper those new features get rooted into a new version of the engine, the more that is an issue. That is more so the thing that I'm worried about. The UE event part and verse itself, I don't really mind. But it seems like a red flag for a direction that I don't think is healthy in the long term. But hey, I would love to be proven wrong about that. Because I do like working in Unreal. I also don't mind working in Godot. I would prefer to steer clear of Unity after all the shit shows that have been happening there over the last 2 years. But Godot is also not a perfect solution. So having both Godot and Unreal as usable options for engines would be nice. So hopefully Unreal doesn't shit the bed too hard in that regard. It's a very rambly and long answer to that, but hopefully that's kind of sensible. That said, I personally don't actually mind them taking out... this probably should be grey. Personally don't actually mind that much if they're taking out Blueprint. Yeah, it's going to be annoying for an entry-level perspective. And I think it is an unhealthy choice because of that, to be clear. So many people choose Unreal Engine because of Blueprint right now. And it's the reason that Adobe doesn't tend to mind people pirating their stuff. At least they didn't. I don't know what it's like right now. But if you allow people to pirate your stuff for non-commercial use, that means that by the time they do become professionals and they have influence in the industry in one way or another, your software is then going to be used by those professional studios. And that's been a strategy that's worked out very well for Adobe because everybody and their mum uses Adobe for Photoshop, for After Effects. Also the fact that After Effects just has no good competition. There's a couple of other composers that do a decent job in compositing, but there's nothing on the market. And believe me, I've looked. There's nothing on the market that just fits all of the things that After Effects does so well in the same level. After Effects is a godsend. It's just unfortunate that it's owned by Adobe. But then we have Premiere Pro, is industry standard for video editing. You've got a little bit of Final Cut in there, starting to get a little bit more of DaVinci Resolve in there, but it's still Premiere Pro is the industry standard, and it hasn't always been. Final Cut used to be a way bigger piece of that pie. There used to be Sony Vegas, which was used a lot, and Premiere was in there, but nowhere near the size that it is now in terms of how industry standard it is. And that's because so many people used it when they were teenagers because they could just fairly easily pirate it, that it has seeped its way into being a professional grade standard. And Unreal is kind of shooting themselves in the foot in that regard. If you make it more difficult for newcomers to use your software, you're cannibalizing your own future professional level users which make you money. So removing Blueprint also, I think, in that regard, in engine health sense, is not an amazing idea. Hello, I've been learning Unity for quite some time, 1 year, and I did 8 projects. But company still wants more things. Any suggestions? That's difficult. Depends on exactly what more they want. One day more can mean a lot of different things. Let's actually see what this looks like in render. Room for improvement. If you've done 8 different projects, I would assume that it might be time to make a project. If you've made 8 projects in a year, that means that you've spent probably about a month on each project. And that must mean that they're all fairly small in scope, which is good for learning purposes, that up front. But also haven't had a lot of polishing passes going on with them. They're probably fairly rough, like beta level products, I would assume. I haven't played through what you've made, but if you've made them in about a month, that seems fairly likely. They're like Game Jam Plus level. Also, I need to close a window. Hold on, it's raining. And after closing that window, it's fucking dark in here, so turn on a light. So maybe that's where some issues could be potentially coming in, is if you... This needs to be brighter. If you have a bunch of things that you've made that you're showing that are all not particularly polished, it doesn't show like a full production understanding quite yet. And a part of that is an issue where like entry-level job requires 10 years of experience. Well, fuck me, I guess, right? That's an issue with many industries altogether. But maybe taking something where you're using all of the things that you've learned over the last year and a bit, and just dedicating like 4 or 5 months to a project and keeping the scope small still, but using like at least 2 months of that time to not make any more new content in this project, but just polish, just improve, and tweak and balance, and just go at it, improve. Once you think, okay, it's done, step away for a few days, come back. There's going to be new things that you see that can be improved. That amount of polishing is quite important. For making a game in general, right? Or making any creation in general. It's a fairly important step that is that's difficult to achieve by just making like the same first like 50% of making a game is very important to practice, and that teaches you all the most important skills. Like that teaches you how to program, that teaches you how to do basic modeling, that teaches you a workflow, what is a good idea to set up systems and architectures and blah 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 blah. But that gets something functional. The second 50%, it's not even 50%. It's only like it's the good old 20/80. But let's call it 30/70 because I don't want to sound like a broken record. The first 30% is actually making it, and then 70% is spent making it good. If you're spending a month, a little over a month on a project, you're very unlikely to have gone very deep into that second 70%. That is making something, like taking it from a base level of this is functional and works and is playable, to adding all the juice to it, adding better graphics, better gameplay, sound design, balancing the game so that it actually is fun to play in a like broader scope than just playing it for like testing for 10 minutes. All those types of things are not going to necessarily develop those base skills that much more, but is a skill into itself, which also is important. And if you've already made like 8 projects, you probably have those bases relatively solid in place now. So that might be a good thing to develop for your skills, but also for being able to show off your skills and what you can do and what you have made. Because if you've made, you can have made 50 projects, but if they're all game jam projects that are made in like a week or a weekend, even oftentimes, those are all going to be fairly rough, and they don't likely give that much like of an attractive feel if you're applying for a job, because they are rough and they don't really show off quality, most likely. Within the context of being made in a week or in a weekend, they can be really good, but if you're applying somewhere for a job, they probably want something more. They're going to be working on a project for like a year or multiple years, and most of that time is going to be spent in that polishing phase. So they probably need somebody that they can trust, has some amount of usefulness in that phase, because it's going to be by far and away the most time that you spend. And that's a little hyperbole on my part, but it's a very very competitive field. If you're looking for working for a job anywhere, it's going to be hard to. I'm actually kind of happy with this. It's going to be hard to find that in general. So working on being able to polish things up is something that I think is quite important. Like quality over quantity is really what it comes down to, I guess. Speaking of AI though, have you tried the MCP plugin? Not yet. Not yet, no. Been meaning to look into it, but there's always things getting in the way. I've seen some people use it though. It seems pretty useful. But there's not HP up, so glass cannon profile render. Let me go back into Affinity. And just fuck. Sometimes it does crash like that. It does do that. Just need to restart it real quick. Also, coming back to the job market thing, I don't know. I don't work for a studio, right? But it also feels like there's probably at some point a moment where you... Please tell me that you saved this. No, you did not. We also got to think to yourself, okay, but what specialty do I want to focus in? Depending on where you want to work or where you can get a job, you're going to be doing multiple different things anyway. Like if you work at fucking Ubisoft or EA or whatever, you might have a job of just like doing one mega specific thing. If you work in a like AA or indie studio, you're going to be wearing multiple hats. That much is for sure. So you do want to have a bit of all-round potential to offer, but you don't want to be too all-round. You want to have like a thing that you're best at, like a main thing. Like you are a artist, and within that maybe even like a modeler that can also texture. And that can also animate, that can also rig, maybe. So you're a generalist 3D artist. But your main thing is you are able to make really, really good quality textures or something like that. The rest of those you need to have a minimum level skill in as well to support that. But it needs to be a thing that you can really sell yourself on, like a speciality. So also, I am a game dev is a very hard sales pitch to make if you can't say, okay, but you as a studio need not a game dev, you need a whole bunch of game devs, but you need somebody who's good at coding. You need somebody, and there's even a split in there. Like there's like low level engine extension coding. There is gameplay system level coding. There is actual like gameplay scripting, like moment to moment scripting that you can code. And there's a couple of different like disciplines within programming even. There also, it's a good idea to be able to apply yourself to everything. Like that last one is maybe even less of a programmer thing and more of a, that is something that you need to be able to do as a game or level designer instead. But that's a whole other branch of things that you can specialize in. So having some, like, first and foremost, a subspecialty within game dev as a whole, because there's so many different aspects to making a game, is important. But even within there, having one thing in which you are like significantly notably good, while still having the skills around that to support that one thing, is a good thing to also work toward. Anyway, let's put this in here. Well, that actually kind of immediately works. I am thinking that we probably want to just create a group here for the, I'm going to call it tiles. And then give this one the outline instead. So you can just put out new tiles in here and they'll automatically have the outline always. I find myself very rambly today. I'm sorry, / I hope it's entertaining / helpful. This will be, I don't know, like kind of like the orange, dark orange for this. Export that. Every time it goes back to the root folder. It's so annoying. I hate it. Actually, I do think that I can maybe just copy paste. Hold on. Maybe I got a thing going here. Where the fuck did that? There we go. I think I might just be able to save it like that. Nope. I can in fact not do that. Okay, we'll just click through the whole folder path. Images, items, augments. Back into Unreal. Which one is it? I called it no pain, no gain. I actually kind of like that. No pain, no gain. Yeah, that's pretty fun. And there we have the second augment made. Let's see, I've been live for 2 hours. I can probably make one more. It's kind of funny. I'm just using different colors. because they are more contrasting here than they are there, this one feels like the heart is bigger. Also, probably because it doesn't have the arrow inside of it than it is here. But they are literally the same geometry, so it's kind of fun, kind of interesting. Yeah, I'm thinking an easy one for me to do would potentially be just the MP, like this MP charm. Because I have an ID for that already as well. So let's make a duplicate collection again. We'll call this MP up. Everything else is going to be turned off here. We don't need this for that. But what we do need is I'm going to make a battery. But I also want to change this material back to... Which one is it? Not... What the fuck? That one. Also give them a name, like bluestone? I don't know. Something like that. Yeah, I want a battery icon for this one. So that should be fairly self-explanatory, I think. I can just add in a cube. Scale down the cube. Focus on the cube. Pull down the cube, flatten the cube, and, well, from there, it should be... Widen. Pull it down a little. And this is going to be really visually simple. Well, I'm getting a couple of ideas maybe. Now that I say that, it's going to be visually simple because it might not necessarily be. Before anything else though, definitely time for a bevel modifier here. Oh, that bevel is not doing much yet, is it? Oh, there's some reason that's... Oh, it's these, right? Yeah. It's really annoying about the bevel modifier. Oh no, it's this face down here. I think, maybe. Hold on. Pull this one down more. Does that bevel things? That starts beveling things. Okay, we can pull that down. That's fine. Okay. So the idea that I had here is that we also add in a couple of this is going to be a little rough to implement with geometry, but we should be able to. A couple of little like stripes, essentially. This is not super symmetrical, I don't think, but it'll probably be good enough. And then we just extrude these down. And the whole thing can just be bigger. Because I want the MP to be a little bit more themed around batteries and electricity. With my character being more of a like robotic little dude. I think that makes sense. But I need to make the UI element for it at some point. So we're probably going to go back in and adjust this thing to just have a 3D-ified version of that UI element once I've made that element. But I don't have that yet. So for now, I think this is fair enough. Let's just manually bevel a couple of these. little bit of a cough. And then start applying some materials. This will be battery 1. And that's just going to be, I don't know. And I want everything to be a diffuse BSDF. Because that's the closest thing we have to like a cartoony vibe. And these are definitely going to be green. So let's add in a new material slot. Battery lights. I say everything diffuse. We also obviously have a mission. We assign that, I don't know, like strength of 6. And I guess this also would ideally be that, maybe? Let me just look up a battery icon real quick on Google. How do they usually color in the top? They don't. For the most part, they don't. So maybe this is fine. It feels like, at least like this part of it being... Is that weird? That kind of feels weird, doesn't it? But it also feels weird to have it be all grey all the way up. So maybe this just needs to... Maybe just needs to move up a little, and then I think all of them, if we do that, also need to be scaled differently. What would you say has taken up the most time while making the game? Modeling, programming, marketing? Well, marketing I'm pretty shit at, so definitely not that, because I haven't spent a lot of time on that. But learning stuff to an extent, because I went into this project with a severe lack of planning, which is always a bad idea. So I'm kind of making stuff up as I go. Right now I have a pretty a solid vision for it all. But when I started, I definitely didn't, because it was supposed to be a, funnily enough, a Unity practice project, which I kind of got too attached to, and I moved back to Unreal at some point and figured, well, just gonna keep making this, and well, it's been a couple of years, and here we are. So to an extent that, but largely it's making assets. Making assets takes so long, even when I don't get distracted every 2 seconds because I'm like talking about other stuff and reading live chat and that kind of thing. Making assets just takes long. Like, writing code is relatively quick in the whole scheme of things. Making assets, making levels to put those assets in, actually making content is definitely what takes the most time. And then going back to the idea of making projects that actually get polished up, that polishing phase also takes forever, and I haven't even like gotten very far or at all into that aspect of it here. That involves making the assets and making the assets like actually good and that kind of stuff. But yeah, I would I'd probably say making assets takes the longest. At least for me. Might also be because I'm just not particularly great at it. Well, although that's a pretty good first run, at least from my standards, I think. All right, what if we just select everything, scale it down a little, move it down a little, and then this in particular gets Ooh, no, 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 no. Why can't I make a full loop cut around this anymore? What the hell? Something's a little weird about this. Case in point, assets. Pain in the ass. Ads. Okay, that was a very bad joke, I'm sorry about that. Yeah, it's not allowing me to make full loop cuts around this anymore. That's a little weird. That doesn't really matter though, I realize now, because all that I need to do is... I don't need to move it, I just need to scale it, I think. That'll do everything that I need it to. So just take this and I scale this, and then, again, move it back into place. This might be a bit much. I think that was a little much. I think this middle ground might have been pretty good. Yeah. Does need to move up a little though. Gives me a bit of room to just generally increase the size for this thing. It's also kind of nice. Yeah, I think that's decent. It's not the best work, but it'll get me through. This will be MP up. Again, I probably just need to make the actual UI element for this before I can really do much with this, I would imagine. And if I make the UI element in Affinity as a vector, I can just import it as a SVG, I think. Speaking of Affinity, here we are again. Pull this in, put it into tiles, export that into wherever we're going to put that. That's my tutorials folder. Definitely not there. Somebody is texting me. MP up augment. I think having made 3 of these today, we can say that we've made some decent progress. So very, very cool. Let's open up a second content browser. Hopefully you guys don't hear those notifications. I don't think you would. You will from my phone and through my speakers, but not the desktop audio, I think. Hopefully, maybe. Jesus Christ, people. Learn what a soft enter is. I don't know who's texting me. It might also be responding to a whole bunch of individual texts that I've sent over like a couple of days to someone. Where did I put MP up? Oh, I've scrolling over it again and again. MP up. Oh, it's a profile render. I don't want to import the profile render. Nope. imported the wrong thing. Want to import this one. MP of augment. And there we have it. The third augment has an image, and I'm quite happy with this as a format for the inventory images for them. So we have strictly going like up in stats. We'll have this teal to blue background. Then balanced augments, which increase one thing but decrease something else. It's going to be very few of them. Are going to have this more dangerous orange. And then we have some like, ability related stuff, which well, we might revise that actually, because I think I only have one orange one, which is fine actually to have this be a little bit more unique. But we probably... The most important thing is that I want to be able to easily differentiate things like iframe up and where is it? Ignore hit chance and keep souls or get more souls. But I guess that this would be like on par maybe with like the hit chance and the AoE damage. So these would be passive abilities, because they're not really like stat upgrades in that way, where the amount of souls that you would get would maybe be considered a stat upgrade. I don't know, something along those lines anyway. We've made 3 of these. That's going to be the thing that I keep doing. I might finish the rest of these off stream. I might next week keep making more of these. Next week we might do something else entirely. I don't know. But for now, I'm going to call it there. And we've made a pretty good start. We've made the template for everything. So at this point, we can make all of the rest. And then at some point in the future, I'll re-render everything as well from top down. Because I'm going to need those as UI elements as well. And then we'll need to redesign some of the UI to display these things in as well. But thanks everybody for hanging out and having fun. And I'll be back with more videos. I think there's actually a video getting uploaded in like 30 minutes being published. And then more streams next week. If I'm going to keep streaming on Fridays, I probably will move my video upload slot to a different day. Because it doesn't seem like a great idea to have both of those on the same day. But I'll figure it out.